Martin, hi, how's it going? On Kramer, you want to say something about yourself? Here you go.
My pronouns are they, them.
Oh, and my pronouns are she, her. Thank you. That's what this is all about. All right, so my objective for today is to put some proof to the pudding that we have, right? So there's growing relevancy of making our businesses more equitable and inclusive in regards to who is part of buying and selling market share in the United States in this country. So first and foremost, this is also a safe space. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them. Just come, from a place of wanting to learn, come from a place of love and without judgment, and we will do just fine, right? And if anybody, has the answer to another question that somebody asks, feel free to answer it. Like, I'm here to learn as well. And this is Stella. Yes, yeah, we can scroll.
Oh, it goes fast.
Yes, it does. Okay. Overview of generations. So we are going to keep this in mind. We're going to keep all these numbers in mind. They do work together. So these generations, yes, sometimes they are up for debate on where the millennial and Gen Z lines begin and end. But this is from NAR. This is what NAR says. We're going to be looking at all of the numbers that, NAR is publishing and stuff like that. So I used to ask people what they picture when they picture a millennial, but I think a lot of that is changing. Millennials are no longer the Starbucks obsessed people. Like, the average age of a first time home buyer we've learned is 38 years old. That person was born in 1987, so they fall into this category. So that's not, somebody who's necessarily irresponsible with their money as we might have thought. So I'm going to ask you, when we think of Gen Z, what do we think of? I want to give stereotypes. Okay.
Cell phones, like now texting, texting.
Lack of maybe in-person communication, right? AirPods, yeah. So
Is there anyone in Gen Z here? Anyone? Okay.
Well, so
Yeah.
So we might think of the younger generations or Gen Z as being maybe less financially stable. They're younger. They're still in high school. Home buying is not something that they're interested in. That's a lie, right? So the oldest person in the Gen Z category is 26 years old. Does anybody work with a 26-year-old client? Maybe younger, maybe around that age, stuff like that. I'm 29, so I fall into this category. I don't know how old mine is, but I'm pretty sure you fall into older millennial.
As an elder, as I like to say.
How many older millennials do we have?
Hey.
Yeah, I'm not. And then we have Gen Z and Gen X.
Any Gen X?
Boomers? Silent?
I'm the wise, so yeah.
So we're going to keep all this in mind as we go through the generations and their market share, okay? And then we're going to keep all of that in mind as we go through how many people in every single generation identifies or is part of the LGBTQ plus community. So next one, please. Okay. What are some of the things that we're noticing about these numbers? Any takeaways?
Older people have more buyer and seller action going on, right? That's terrible.
Absolutely right, because they've been on this earth for longer and have been making money for longer and all that stuff. They have more assets. Anything else that we notice?
That the younger people are replacing the older people.
So something that, if you haven't been looking at these charts over the past few years, again, we've been looking at this for maybe 4 years at this point. Gen Z back in 2020 used to have less than 1% of the buyer and the seller share. So, when COVID happened and we had these amazing interest rates and everything like that, older millennials, younger millennials, Gen Z, they shot forward in their buyer and seller shares because there was more affordability in the market. So Gen Z over the past few years has really held steady. They've increased and then they've held steady with this previous year. Despite lower inventory, despite, questioning interest rates and job security, they are still holding very strong. So that 14-year-old to 26-year-old, which is actually 18 to 26-year-olds, they're still holding strong. Does anybody have any ideas or why that would be? I mean, information. Exactly, information. So they are, like we've been stating, very quick with it, with the phones. Financial literacy is something that they have a lot more access to than other people because the information is just out there for them to look at on their own. I will be honest, younger and older millennials, their buyer and seller share has slightly decreased over the years. It was increasing steadily, maybe 3 or 4 years, and recently has kind of gone back down a little bit. I personally believe that has to do with low inventory of affordable housing. Questioning of job security, that is something that I've been hearing agents, clients have been talking about lately. Especially if their teachers work for the government, stuff like that, they're just really not sure about their income future, so they're just not participating. So yeah, we're gonna keep all of this in mind as we go to the next slide. This is a little blurry because I tried to blow it up. So the article that this was pulled from has a lot of stats on income and debt ratio of the LGBTQ plus community and non-LGBTQ plus community.
This was the new one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this article was just published. It was in PAR's email. If you read their emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's brand new from May.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. Is it saying that out of all first-time buyers, 46% are LGBTQ plus, and 40% of all first-time sellers? So it's like half, pretty much.
Yeah.
Is that nationwide?
Yes,
Yes.
it's nationwide. Yeah.
Oh,
It's from NAR. PAR sent out the email, included it, but I sent it to Lee. I was like, we had to use this in our presentation.
And I love numbers.
So non-LGBTQ plus is only 28%
Yes.
of market share?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
who makes up the remainder, if you don't mind me asking?
Everybody else.
Oh, so,
Yeah, so it's like if you cover these last 4 ones, then the first 2 are.
Well, usually in the polls, they include a refuse to identify, right?
Yeah, that's right.
First two don't add up exactly going on for this.
Right.
It's still a lot though. That's one of the things I was gonna ask you, like, what do you notice, right? And it's that the LGBTQ plus community has more first-time buyer and seller share. And as we were talking about first-time buyers, the average age range now is 38 years old. So definitely somebody who is gonna be active in the market, making life changes, stuff like that. 38-year-old is like, we love that client.
Yeah.
That is still a buyer, somebody who could sell in the future. That's somebody with friends who can buy. Love a 38-year-old. Do you remember what it was last year? No.
They haven't done this poll in a couple of years.
Okay.
NAR, I think it was from 2022.
Yeah.
Was the last time they said it, because I read the whole thing, and so these are like new, fresh numbers. But the other thing is, like, no one mentioned about Gen Z, but Gen Z is like our queerest generation. And even if you haven't worked with someone and they only have a small portion of the market share right now, you will in 5-10 years from now. It will just, at some point you're going to be working with clients who identify as LGBTQ.
So yeah, that's what all these numbers are essentially showing. And from this as well, from the article, and I can send you all of the links if you would like to read this stuff yourself. Those first couple numbers were pulled from the NAR home buyer and seller trends. It's like a 90-page PDF of like all the types of things that people are buying. So the proportion of U.S. adults who are part of the LGBTQ plus community has almost, or standing that people are, has almost tripled from 2012. So it was 3.5% in 2012, and now it's 9.3%. If that doesn't sound like a lot, it's 31 million adults in the United States. Kimberly Ruley gave us a lovely little stat that 49% of homeowners are part of the LGBTQ plus community. So how would you feel if you lost half of your business right now? Would anybody feel good about that?
Oh,
Probably not, right? So, what are we looking at when we don't make our business more inclusive? We don't educate ourselves. We are looking at losing a significant amount of our pipeline, as well as just, morally right thing to do, but that's not. That's that later on. So there is a higher percentage of first-time home buyers, like you've seen, who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And also, sometimes when we're talking about this stuff, it doesn't really seem like anybody in this room might feel this way because you showed up today, that it might be inconvenient to learn these new terms. It's confusing, or it's frustrating, or why do I have to modify my language to be more inclusive? So I'll get into that a little bit, but does anybody know what the SRES certification is? Does anybody know what that stands for?
Senior real estate.
Senior real estate specialist.
Yeah.
So they,
Well, you know the investment.
I'll say sex, real estate. I was like, a lot of sexual orientation, something, sexuality, real estate, and
The sexuality real estate.
It's Kramer with this. Congratulations, you had to call it how to be better real estate. That's more appropriate.
figure it out. Serious, yeah. People.
So the SRES certification is specifically designed to help real estate agents work with the aging population of buyers and sellers. And the SRES certification states that they help agents, help buyers and sellers who are 50 and older. I don't count that as a senior. Real quick, anybody's like, 50 isn't old. Yeah, I get that. But the SRES is stating that,
It is.
that clients 50 and older need a different level of TLC, need different language and stuff like that. So I have a question for you all. What is something that you would not say to a senior buyer or seller?
That you would not say? Like that's not like old time. You make it up the steps. And you walk upstairs. Or... I was
just gonna say, you wouldn't want to insult them by, making an ageist comment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or assuming they need certain things.
There we go.
It's assuming part that you think because someone's a certain age that they should go into a senior community. That often happens too.
Yeah.
A lot of seniors are treated like children, and that they're not physically or mentally able to make decisions for themselves. And like if mom walked into a listing appointment, somebody wanted to sell their home and they were 75 and goes, here's all these senior living facilities for you. That I completely turned them off, because you just assume that that was the next step for their lives. Maybe they want to buy a condo and rent a house because that's their dream. Maybe they want to move to Colorado because they want to ski. We don't know. Those people exist though. So it's similar to the LGBTQ plus community that we don't want to assume their lifestyle or who they are or anyone, whether they're part of that community or not. We're going into things with absolutely no assumptions. And so when we get onto Mon's portion, Mon's going to teach you that language and just how to actually work with those people. So, for example, if there is someone who is like me, who is femme, who is a cisgendered woman, which is a privilege, by the way, and I walk in and I want a 3-bedroom house, you're going to look as a client if you assume that those 2 extra bedrooms are for children and not for my cats. Like, that's really where we're at in this. Hilton does need his own bedroom. This is Hilton. So just back to a little bit of inclusive language. I have heard personally actually heard just last week that it's like, you're putting yourself into a box with all of these different terms to identify yourself as far as, gender or sexual orientation, sexuality goes. But that's really not true. And different pronouns, different ways to identify oneself allows people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community to feel more secure and feel more free. Like literally someone came up to me last week and was like, doesn't that actually limit you, putting you in boxes and things like that? And I was like, no, it empowers people. We live in a very binary world. Husband, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, things like that. And there are people that exist that don't fall into either of those categories, right? So we don't want to meet them in this binary community when they've never been there, So that's pretty much what I have here today. Does anybody have any questions on numbers or anything so far? So long story short, my whole thing is be more inclusive or you're gonna lose a lot of money. Okay?
Cool. So we'll switch into pronouns now because that's important. A lot of people here at this office and in general, I would say real estate is a tough industry for someone who doesn't use she, her, or he, him pronouns. I constantly get misgendered. My pronouns are they, them. It happens from the title company to a loan officer. It depends on like whoever is there. And it just happened last week at closing, right here on the table. And I had to correct the title rep right there in person, and she just like kind of stared at me. And it's like, it's a very difficult thing to have to do. And the point here is to not make assumptions, right? Like, so we love the stats and that the stats are great too, but the thing I want you to walk away is, just don't make any assumptions about anyone. don't assume based on how someone looks what their pronouns are. Don't, assume if they're married, if they have kids, if, we just have no idea. Like, you just can't know. And so the best way you can make someone feel comfortable if you're working with a client is by sharing your own pronouns first when you meet someone. So if I meet someone, hey, I'm on, my pronouns are they, them, that invites someone else to share their name and their pronouns back. And then also automatically, even if you are not in the LGBTQ community, it does not matter. Sharing your pronouns is a sign of respect. It says also, hey, I might be a safe person. I know about pronouns, and this person might feel more comfortable sharing that. I've actually talked to several queer people who've worked with agents who are not in the queer community because they felt comfortable because their agent shared pronouns or had some kind of knowledge about that. And so I want y'all to walk away with that and just the importance of pronouns. Also, if you incorrectly misgender someone, no big deal. You don't have to make it a big thing. Like, you don't even have to say sorry. You could just say thank you or thanks for correcting me and move right on. And then you just note that. It's something that's to get used to. And, when you do something wrong, typically, when you make a mistake, there's usually a feeling of like maybe shame or embarrassment that's involved, but you don't have to feel that. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Even people in the queer community make mistakes all the time. I got misgendered at the tailgate by someone queer in the office and had, corrected himself right there on the spot. No apology. It happens, right? It always does. So, going a little bit further into pronouns here, I'll give you a sample script. I just want to point out to you, normalizing pronouns normalizes people. It creates safety for everyone. Like I was saying, if you share your pronouns first. So here's a quick sample script with two people meeting for the first time in a community event. Hey, I'm Jordan. I use they, them pronouns. It's really nice to meet you. Alex says, hi, Jordan. I'm Alex. I use she, her pronouns. Nice to meet you too. Jordan says, thanks for sharing. I'm trying to get in the habit of offering mine up front so no one feels put on the spot. So, it's nice to just offer them. And if you don't want to if you're not ready for the verbal conversation, just throw them in your email signature. Just put them down there. And then you shoot out an email to a new client and they might be like, hey, that could really make the difference between you winning that interview or whatever between someone else. It's really nice. So those are a couple pointers. Any questions on pronouns so far or misgendering? Yeah.
Sorry, so I'm not familiar with they, them. Could you kind of explain it?
Yeah, Leah kind of touched a little bit on the binary. So we live in a society that's very binary, that has very this or that,
Sure.
man, woman, male, female, whatever, she, her, or he, him. But they, them is pronouns that do not adhere to the binary. So it's someone like myself who doesn't want to be called she, her, or he, him. It's essentially gender neutral. A lot of other languages have those pronouns, sometimes all, depending on what language you're speaking. I had clients who were speaking I think it was Cambodian in the closing last week, and they're like, yeah, we actually don't have any gendered pronouns in our language. I'm like, oh, awesome. So, yeah, any other questions?
Just real quick, when in doubt, you say them.
Yeah. You give a example.
Oh, my lost wallet example. Okay, so for anybody who thinks that you can't use they, them as a singular pronoun. So, does everybody remember the Starbucks? And maybe I should choose a different coffee shop for this example, because we don't like Starbucks. Does everybody remember the coffee shop Starbucks next to the Walnut Street office?
Yeah.
So I used to work in the Walnut Street office all the time. So I would go into that Starbucks all the time. So one time when I was in that Starbucks, I noticed that there was a wallet on one of the seats there. So I checked the bathroom to see if anybody was there, and there was really nobody else around. So I asked the what do they call them? Thank you. I said, hey, have you seen anybody recently? Or visited anybody's wallet? I'm not really sure if you've seen them. I don't know. And so they said, no, I haven't actually seen anybody. I've been the only one in here aside from you, so I'm not really sure what to do with it. And so I thanked them, and I just went on my way. I went through the wallet. I didn't take any money. And I found the person who actually owned this wallet. Called them up, said, hey, that's me. Great. And they were so grateful that they actually offered me money out of their wallet, but obviously I did not give them money out of their wallet. And so at this point of the story, I don't know if you realize this story just isn't true. This never happened. But maybe 10 or 15 times I said they or them for a singular person. for a barista and for the person whose wallet was missing. And you were able to follow that this entire time. Even when I changed to actually own this pronoun, it's been part of the English language forever. And I've got 2 English degrees, so fighting on it. Really that. So thank you.
Also, like, there's some people who subscribe to they, them pronouns because it's like in solidarity or part of their identity as a political statement, as they're queer, and they also subscribe to they, them, but they may not be going through any sort of medical transitioning or transgender or whatever their process is. Some, like, they could be like anatomically male or female, but subscribe to that as a political identity in solidarity with with LGBTQ communities. Then there's folks that are actually transitioning through various stages of their transition, who are transgender, who are going through some sort of hormone therapy or transitional or medical intervention in order to change their genders, that are they are subscribing to they, them, or may also subscribe to the other gender that they're transitioning into. So there's lots of variations, and LGBTQ identities and communities are on a spectrum with sexual orientation, sexuality, and all of the variables that are happening.
Gotcha. So they, them is the best if I'm at the bar, don't know.
Oh yeah, no, I always default to they them.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Tom, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just gonna put out there. So outside of stating your own pronouns, what do you think is the most respectful way for an agent when dealing with like to ask or go about asking what their preferred pronoun?
So first thing I'll say is to what? So it's years ago it used to be like word pronouns. Now it's just pronouns.
Oh, right.
So I would just say the thing I say that what pronouns do you use? What pronouns do you go by? And that's a simple question you can ask anyone. They don't have to be queer. I literally ask this to all clients because I need to know how to refer to them. If I'm introducing them to a lender or to someone like via email, like that I would like. That's so embarrassing to me if I like don't ask up front. Like I would just have to use their first name because I would know. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What do you do if you're in a situation where like you're doing like a legal contract and don't know if it might be different than what they represent them or want to be represented as?
You mean their name, their legal name?
Or even their gender? Like if you're doing a legal contract.
Well, for our contracts for real estate purposes, only the lender needs,
Okay.
has, I know it's very outdated that you have to have like male or female on there. But for our purposes, for any PAR document, you don't need to know anyone's gender. You just need to know their legal name. And a lot of my clients, go by a different name. And right before I send any kind of contract, a buyer agency agreement, say, hey, what's your legal name? I gotta put this on the form. And so they know it's coming, and they're pretty used to it. But I continue to refer to them as the name that they introduced me by. And then anytime I send for example, going under contract, I send it to take me to closing. I say, hey, because they only see the legal names. And so I said, this client goes by this name. Do not use anything on the contract. And giving everyone a heads up so that they can do their job properly too. The other thing
Raise your hand.
Oh yeah, I was just looking at the one with the X. How do you pronounce that?
Zizem.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The other one I wanted to know was the he, they. I know many people, including my own partner, who uses multiple pronouns. Some people may use several pronouns. He, theys, she, theys, and sometimes people will put they first, they, she, or they, he. And some people use them interchangeably. That's usually them saying you can use either pronoun for me, and it's respectful to use either one to switch it up. So you have options for that. So it should be a little bit easier when you have more than one, but yeah.
I'm sorry, what is the XE again? How do you pronounce that?
Zizem. They're like neo pronouns.
Okay.
They don't they're not new meaning like new, meaning like it's a word that has been used in English. It's not actually like from our language. They're made up and are used as identifiers.
Okay.
Yeah. I see more Gen Z using neo pronouns. That's just what I see. Leah kind of already touched about being inclusive, but also inclusive language. This is one of the biggest things I hear all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's referring to a binary. Not everyone identifies as a lady, as a man. Just saying hi everyone, hey y'all. What is everyone's favorite gender inclusive term?
Y'all.
Y'all, okay.
Folks.
Folks,
Friends.
friends, I love friends.
Sam.
Peeps.
Fam,
Big family.
homie,
Andrew.
use. There you go, use if we're gonna be really silly. I also really like can't stand if I get an email and someone on the email sees some names on there and they just like, hey ladies, and just like typing like that, and I just have never liked that from a professional standpoint, but also just like I mean people don't really, it really boxes people in, and if you're included on that email chain, you're not identifying in that way, it's a little offensive. So just kind of be cautious of your language, and it takes practice. Like you have to work to unlearn and reframe how you think about things. Maybe if you're like taking public transit or you're going out and you're seeing people, just start using they them pronouns like, oh, they have a nice face, or like, oh, they have great hair. And just practice on your own. You don't have to just assume she, her, he, him for everyone. Here are some other alternatives to gender terms that we like. We already talked about y'all, folks, people's, guests. For example, when I work with two clients or if anyone has a partner, I never say, you will never catch me saying husband or wife, ever. I only say spouse for anyone. Significant other, partner, whatever. So again, this goes down to like not making any assumptions on who you meet, client or friend, whatever.
Babe.
Babe friends. Yeah.
I like the hard ones. Yeah.
Here are real estate gender neutral terms. We use these terms all the time. They do not have any gender associated with them whatsoever, right? Yeah.
I just have a question. I don't mean to be like difficult, but I just want to
Yeah.
So for a he, him, you have Mr. For a she, her, you're Mrs. Obviously, you're not gonna call your customer like Mr. Bob Smith, right?
Yeah.
For they, them, what like Mr. I don't know what that's called, but what would you use instead of that?
So that category is called honorifics in English. Honorifics is like saying ma'am, miss, Mr., whatever, sir. The gender neutral one is pronounced mix. It's just MX, period. That's the gender neutral one. So yeah, I often make the joke, like if you ever like sign up on a website for something and they always like make you choose your honorific, and if they don't have the gender neutral mix on there, I literally choose doctor. I'm like, I would rather be called Dr. Kramer, and I'm like, well,
Doctor is gender neutral.
it is gender neutral, right? So I'm like, well, we need to really update that, but
Because they're not up.
yeah. So here are things. So I guess we use these terms all the time. No gender associated with them whatsoever. So yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, when I was younger, like, people used to use S afterwards for women, like waitress, stewardess, and as we transitioned away from that, now it's evolving even more.
Totally. I agree. Like I always think about like flying, and like I feel like everyone was taught like stewardess. And I'm like, we just say flight attendant, Same thing at like a bar, we call it server, that kind of thing. But yeah, overall the language has changed, and that's the best thing about language is it evolves. And it evolves based on culture, based on, people changing. It's a living, breathing thing, just like houses.
It's hard in English too. In a lot of languages you already have gendered nouns. So it would be like chalkboard has a gender. Well, chalkboard is obviously not an animate object, so the way our brains as English speakers function, it puts people into a different category than other nouns.
Yeah.
If you kind of remove yourself from that, it's a little I think it'd be easier to make your brain be like, oh, okay.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Men?
So last time we were in Kimberly Brody's class, and we had a conversation about like societal issues, and even though there's more equality now and more legislation, a lot of it's getting rolled back, and we were just talking about the LGBTQ community being under attack. Like right now, the federal government is sending people passports with their dead names, which is the names of their former selves, and that's like a huge controversy. And there's a lot of attacks on LGBTQ folks at the local, state, and federal level, and it's happening in tandem with like attacks on female reproductive rights, DEI, LGBTQ, minorities, immigrants. So what is your perspective on what's happening? And Mon is such an incredible leader. They're the president of the Eastern PA Real Estate Alliance, and we've been in a symposium together. So you know a lot about the statistics and what's happening on the national level. Were you there during the World during the June 5th symposium in DC.
I didn't go down this year because World Pride was down there.
Oh, so you went to World Pride.
No, I didn't go to World Pride. Like that's too large of an event for me to be down there. But it's a good transition because I do want to mention too. No one here is talking about it in our office yet. So like leadership, I think this should be on everyone's radar. But on the national level with the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance, there's a lot going on. At the NAR level, on the national level with our Association of Realtors, which I'm not a fan of NAR, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. But there's a lot of stuff going up right now. They just had their meeting in June in Pride Month, and they decided to, I'm going to use my languages, roll back certain protections in the Code of Ethics. What makes us realtors is we abide by the Code of Ethics. That's why we take our, continuing education and, every 2 years, every other year. And one of those articles, Article 10-5, protects folks against harassment. And at the June meeting, just a couple weeks ago, the NAR voted on changing some of the language to define harassment as to when a realtor is doing only real estate activities. So this change is huge. It's really scary because what it's saying is that before, like, there was a lot of, misunderstanding, misinterpretation that, like, a realtor could be posting on Facebook, on social media, like, their job as a realtor, right? But on Facebook, they might have said something racist or homophobic or transphobic and posted whatever view. And then people were reporting, complaints to NAR, filing, Code of Ethics complaints. And, I think NAR was struggling with how to interpret this. So they've changed the language for harassment, and now they're saying, well, you can essentially post whatever the hell you want to, whatever is racist, whatever, as long as you're not doing any real estate activities while saying that or posting it. So essentially they are allowing realtors, our colleagues across the country, can openly spew any kind of, hatred that they want to on public platforms in real life, as long as they're not doing any real estate activity. That is the law now. It was just changed.
But if you're writing up a contract at the same time, just seems crazy. Like, who's to say?
Yeah, who's to say? I mean, that's where enforcement, the alliance on a national level is already trying to fight it. And I know someone on our board here locally, Jason Burkholder, he is out in Lancaster. He was in the room too when the vote went down, and a lot of people were voicing their dissent. So there are a lot of people who are against it, but the rule was still able to be passed. And so I've heard no one here in our office talk about it. We're, one of the largest brokerages. I think it's really important that everyone, that we kind of crack down on that, because we've had issues as an office, and we've let people go for, in the past, if an agent has said something or posted something racist or just wrong, people have gone let go from our office. And we all can't get fired. We're all 1099 contractors, but you can still be unaffiliated and not associated with the brokerage anymore. But there needs to be consequences, and NAR is just not willing to deal with it at this point. So
I will put it this way: you guys are in the right. If you're racist or you say any sort of hate things, and you're a part of the same brokerage as we are, it's a reflection of us.
Right.
If you and I hang out in the same room for an hour, and you go out and say I hate XYZ people, I probably do too. That's probably do. We're all bad.
Right. And the consumers, people who are not in real estate, do not understand how brokerages work. They just assume Keller Williams. And when I was I don't want to be associated with any type of Keller Williams and Power. If there's an agent here that says or does something and that's why we let people go, if need be. But on a national level, this is what's happening. And now, certain brokerages are trying to, unaffiliate with NAR. But the thing is that NAR has this chokehold on many on MLS. And so, there are some places here, especially in our area, you can't be on the MLS if you're not a realtor, if you're not associated with NAR. And so there's this, it's kind of like a pyramid scheme, if I'm really thinking about it, but it's not great.
Yeah, so I'm on the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors DI committee and on the legislative forum, and we were talking about do we change the name DI in order to appease the federal government, which those trade associations don't get federal funding. We are advocacy trade associations, so they advocate for policies on the local level with GPAR, PAR, and then also NAR. So they're important, the advocacy of all of the technical policies when it comes to real estate. When it comes to code of ethics or when it comes to these types of enforcement protocol, their justification was that they're aligning with freedom of speech
Right.
and that they are not they're not a mediation entity that's going to facilitate enforcement when it comes to ISM issues. But I know this brokerage, we changed our DI from DI, which I started in 2020 with a bunch of folks, to belonging and inclusion. And then we also but I think it's just a term. I think the work that we're doing is diversity and inclusion.
For sure.
And I also think that NAR has a lot of different issues that we're looking at. But there's lots of different ways to address those types of issues. Like kicking someone out right away for saying something racist or homophobic is not going to change the culture or change that person or change the environment. Sometimes there's like variations of restorative justice and things like that. So I think we need to NAR and PAR needs to have more kind of implementation of different types of enforcement and restorative justice, so that there's different ways that you can handle a situation rather than like, oh, you're not part of the brokerage anymore or you're off of this MLS or whatever. But yeah, it's a conversation we're having at the IFR.
Yeah, that's good.
Question, Carla. Yeah. Okay. When it comes to social media and responding to posts, any tips on like how to respond without offending someone with a number of problems? Is it real nice?
You mean like if someone says like a bad comment or
No,
in general?
posted, you could be like, "That's a cool shirt on." You see what's in the shirt?
Well,
That's it.
yeah, so yeah, you don't need to use their.
I'm just wondering if there's any tips for him.
I would say, pronouns are you only use in third person.
Right.
So it's when you're talking about someone to someone else, not directly to them. You're not directly to their pronouns. So you could just say, "Oh, that's a cool shirt, I love it." Or like, hype someone up, gas them up, that's great.
Exactly. I suppose
Yeah.
it's a nice post.
There you go.
And you can always use they them just when you're
Okay.
So I haven't had a conversation with someone yet, but I'm connecting them. Team coaches every day. I try to use they them.
Gotcha.
Nobody's like trying to fight me in a dark alley through using they them. Like it hasn't happened. And yeah, like I use it like all the time. So I'm constantly, mentioning, oh, this person might be right for this role, or this person might be right for this role. Meet them, stuff like that. And I don't actually know because they don't have it on their signature. They don't have it on their social media. And I'm trying not to assume. So.
I think the first time I heard people using that type of terminology, I sometimes they can like refer to like a plural amount of people, and you're like, that's the first time I ever heard it. That's like,
Yeah. Don't forget about the coffee shop story. Refer to two different people.
You studied Shakespeare in school?
no,
Did you ever have to read anything Shakespeare?
no, I did not.
Never in your whole life you ever had to read it.
Oh yeah, that was a very long time ago.
Then you've seen a singular they them pronoun. Because Shakespeare used them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you back there.
I want everyone else to get their question. So, I was at Liz Scott's class at Temple. I think it was around this time last year.
Oh yeah, the one that the Alliance put on?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
she did a great job, and
Yeah.
she was explaining about certain scenarios where agents have lost a lot of business by misgendering and not being respectful. So I just want to ask, have you had any personal experience with seeing agents lose business because of that?
I don't know. Yes, I mean, because I'll talk to clients on consults and they'll say like, "Oh, I didn't, feel comfortable with my previous agent," and I don't know who they are, but someone is losing business out there. But it's not just being misgendered. It could be pronouns, but like,
Right.
it could be also just assuming like your family structure. Who, like maybe you have multiple partners. Maybe like there's just I sold a house yesterday. My closing yesterday was 3 buyers, and that's like you don't make assumptions, and
Who identifies as CSM?
who?
Yeah,
Oh, I mean anyone could.
it's the same thing as they them.
It's a neo pronoun, but I would say there's no gender associated with it, so it's gender neutral term.
So it's the same.
So it's the same category. Does that make sense?
They're interchangeable?
No,
They're not. Okay.
They're not.
Like similar.
I'll say they're both gender neutral pronouns, but
There's
Yeah.
more than that. too.
There's more. I gave the easier ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
So someone who may be wanting to use
Yeah.
gender neutral will
a lot of times you'll see them use they them, but there's a whole cluster of gender neutral that they might
Gotcha.
So I have a question about, you were talking about NAR, but like I know for us, and I'm not, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm not an agent. So I don't know all of these nuances. I know that for like our office, you also have to be part of the local board, right? Do the local boards have any say in how you act? You know, like the GPAR put out the statement and say, hey, if you're part of GPAR, these are our code of ethics and this is what you have to follow.
I mean, from my understanding is it all goes up to NAR's code of ethics. So GPAR and PIR all follow NAR. They're just like state level and local level, and that's it. But I don't think that PR or GPAR have their own set of code of ethics for agents to follow. It's all the same national code of ethics for every realtor. If you call yourself a realtor, then that's the code of ethics. But yeah, I guess the other thing I'll mention too is that, you know, Min, you were talking about on like a state level. And does everyone know RPAC or what that means?
Yeah.
It's like the Realtor like Political Action Committee. So it's like, you know, legislators. So essentially the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance last year developed a tracker because all of us as realtors, you know, when we sign up for our dues every year at GPAR, you pay a fee, not only to GPAR, it goes all the way up to like NAR dues, right? And those dues fund legislators who are, you know, on the state level, who are essentially voting for things that are anti-LGBTQ. But our dollars are still going to them. And so this RPAC tracker that the Alliance developed filters down to like what legislators in what states are voting for rules that go against, you know, essentially fair housing, but for LGBTQ folks that are receiving our money.
So that's very yeah. I would say like RPAC there's a committee in RPAC. There's also a committee in GPAR, that's like the professional standards committee. There's like 9 of them. We also have a local PAC as well here. And their job is to fundraise money, take an allocation from the dues, and then also fundraise from other people who donate. And there's lots of wealthy realtors who are donating to RPAC. And then the RPAC committee takes that money and then they distribute it to fund campaigns for people that are pro real estate.
Yeah.
They may or may not be looking at that politician's entire campaign advocacy stuff. So they may or may not know, and it may or may not be intentional. But there are people in our pack that are very particular about particular candidates and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting committee, and I'm hoping to get on that. So if you can have a say, but I think it's really important to be part of these trade associations, continue to support them, even though some things are problematic. What I'm hoping that our pack can do is to, when we support these candidates for pro real estate policy, to say like we will support you because you're pro, but then you also have to fix this issue, and if you don't, then there will be some sort of consequence, or maybe we don't fund your campaign.
Right.
So there's ways for us to push them, but depending on where they are geographically in the state, it may limit their ability to be more pro LGBTQ if they want to win a race. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're in a big city. Yeah, like out in like rural PA, it's not.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where our dollars are going. So, yeah. Any other questions about like, I don't know, anyone have any personal questions that they're like, I never understood this, or why this happens, or safe space, you can ask anything.
What's the flag on the right hand side?
This flag?
Yes.
That's the trans flag.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know what it is either. I've seen it.
Yeah, this is the trans flag, that's the LGBTQ flag, and I believe that is the bisexual flag. Oh, sure.
Yeah. The fact that what you were saying when you mentioned the NAR thing and the harassment change, I've just been thinking about it for a little bit. Honestly, we as a community have some sort of power, right? Like, I don't know if this is ethically true. I'll be looking into so tell me if you can't do this. But let's say you see somebody that we know, like another realtor at like Remax, whatever. pick a random name,
Yeah.
like post like really like, you know, mean like racist, whatever, xenophobic, homophobic stuff, right?
Yeah.
Can we just all say, hey, like, we're not gonna work with this guy and we're gonna spread the word, like, hey, like, this is a real thing black, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I
No,
go straight to
no.
G-Bar with a complaint if I ever saw any local agent.
but they don't care now you said it,
Yeah.
right? So they don't care anymore.
Well, G-Part
Oh.
can still issue, you know, say something, but on a national level, yeah, like no one, but yeah. I would report it.
But you have a report that, but like what's considered racist or homophobic or xenophobic may be different to different people. So like sometimes people can use subtle nuanced language, and then some people are very overtly racist or whatever. So there's you gotta be correct.
Well, somebody's like, I hate like XYZ people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are people that says stuff like that, but maybe. But also, like, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your client, and so your personal or interpersonal situation or issues or perspective on any agent shouldn't impact your ability to do your job for your client. So if your client wants to see a house that they're the listing agent, but you're like, don't see the house because you're racist, like, then you are violating your fiduciary responsibility. So keep that very neutral. Like everyone's politics here are very different, but we all have a responsibility financially to our clients and to do in their best interest, no matter how we feel about anyone.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like some of that comes down to your own personal ethics, right? Like my favorite is if you're in a conversation with someone who says something that you don't agree with, you have to be the voice of reason. You have to be the voice that's willing to step up and say, hey, why was that joke funny? Like, you know, and then call them out on it. Because if you're thinking it, likely someone else is thinking it. People just aren't willing to be the voice that comes across and sounds like that. So if you see something that you disagree with, or you're in a conversation with someone who says something that you think is ethically questionable, you have that opportunity to be someone who says something.
I agree with that. And I think most people, it's a teachable moment for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing that I'm really, you know, kind of proud of you guys for putting this all together. I come from a commercial real estate background, which is a very different. Yes, very binary, and it has a completely different attitude towards pronouns in general, right? Like just from like the people that I follow within my network and stuff. So no one really, like whether you're CBRE or Colliers or JLL, I don't know, but like kudos to us for putting this education out there.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
thank you all.
Just
We
real
all-
quick.
Working on it.
The only other time before
Yeah.
your big commercial buyers are Gen Z and younger millennials. It's just gonna happen as time goes on. And, you know, identification and who we are, it's becoming more fluid with these generations and they're accepted. So as time goes on, do you want to lose half your business?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And educate the people in your sphere. Educate your lenders, educate your home inspectors, educate title all the time. One Team Abstracts, they're great. They're great with my pronouns. I don't mess them up. They know who I am. They're great. And I've literally I've literally said to certain lenders, look, if this cannot happen again, or I will not give you my business. I am trusting people because my clients are trusting me to be connected to a person that is also not going to make assumptions. So it's not just you, it's everyone in your circle too that should really know. So, ooh.
And if mom's preferred lender, they send a buyer there who trusts them. And that lender says, hi ma'am, how's it going?
Yeah.
You looking to get married and settle down and never work again and stuff like that? And that person's just like,
Yeah.
that makes mom look very, very
Yeah.
bad. It does, because who the F did you just refer me to? That just, insulted me so severe just by making all these assumptions. So
Especially if she says this is my good friend, my good lender, or whatever. And she looks, well, sorry, they look bad.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. You said that
Sorry, we're working back here.
Say the sorry. You just corrected right away. You picked it up you weren't, not even That's exactly what. That's exactly
I
what.
kind of like baseball and said,
There you
shit,
go.
come on.
Yeah.
I mean, the effort being there, every single person that's sitting in this room, the effort to learn this stuff, no matter how good you are at it, shows that you care about this, shows that you are really trying to bring equitable client service to every single person and also just create a safe space for not only yourself, but for everyone that you meet. So, you know, don't only apply it to your business, apply it to every single thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing, I think oftentimes I think we put pronouns in a different category as everything else, and that's what makes it scary. But like, if you have multiple siblings, how many times has one of your parents called you like 3 of your siblings names, or they like called you your name, or if you're working with, say,
Not just the siblings, like anybody.
you do this with people all the time, and we mess up all the time, and that's being human. And so I think when we put it in, when we are so scared of messing up, we stop doing it. Or we don't do it because it's
Yeah.
scary. So
Yeah.
we see it as like, we actually mess up all the time, and especially with names. Like I have clients, Devin and Tara, and I always switch them up all the time. And I'm like, Devin, Tara, you know what I mean? Like, we do it. And I think if we're not as hard on ourselves, it's easier. That's all I
Yeah, give yourselves grace. You're here learning. We're all human. And thanks for being here.
Great.